Lü Uanming, an intellectual, a poet, and also an artist. I was very impressed by many aspects of Lü Uanming's work and a very high level of skill, but even more remarkable, a sensibility, and obviously a man of deep feeling. Yes, one of the features of Lü Uanming's work is the poetry of his composition and his brushwork. Though he can paint very naturalistically, nonetheless, there are always moments when he flattens things out. So you can see that here. The mother bear, her head is somewhat flattened, even though the fur is completely naturalistic, showing his own creativity and his own control over the composition, very much as Manet did. In fact, this is a characteristic of the earliest Western modern art. Manet, Gauguin, people like that, they do exactly the same thing. It's very naturalistic here, and there it's absolutely flat. But here again, we see a very naturalistic rendering of the fur and a sensitivity for the inner life of the animal. For instance, this panda here, like all his animals, has an inner life, has its own intelligence, has its own sensitivity. And in this case, you can see that it's just about to doze off. One eye is thoughtful and is still thinking something. We'll never know what it is. The other eye has already started to get drowsy and close up. So this is a state of consciousness we've all been in, and which the artist then conveys to us. This is extremely difficult to achieve, but it's something that Lü Uanming does again and again and again. Another feature is the way he fuses naturalism with the stroke. The stroke is fused with the actual object, which is rendered very realistically. So if you look carefully, you can see the little buds on the branches. They're all accurately rendered. The spacing is absolutely accurate. This is a man who was looking at those details, and he conveys them perfectly. The same thing with the eyes of the animals and the fur. So very often, and his leaves also. Yeah, here we have another panda painting, and again, the subjectivity of the mother panda is very clear. This ability to attribute to animals a genuine intelligence and sensitivity is different from the European notion that you're projecting human feelings onto the animal. In China, since ancient times, the idea is that we're all one qi, we're all made of one matter, one material. And it was often assumed throughout Chinese history that animals also have feelings, they have rights. Bai Ju, famous poet, Su Dongpo, famous poet, and Zhuangzi, the great philosopher, they all had a sympathy with animals. And we can see that in all of Lü Uanming's paintings. In this album, there are paintings of dogs who appear to be pets. And they all have a very satisfied look on their face. If you've ever had a pet dog, you know that after you've gone out for a run with your dog and you come back and they just feel very satisfied and they get this look on their face. And that's what the artist has captured absolutely perfectly. He is conveying to us this, again, this inner state that the animals had, which he could only have done if he had observed the animals very closely. He is accurate when it comes down to the claws, the nose, the ears, everything. This is a man who has observed very carefully the physical presence of these animals. But at the same time, he's obviously very concerned with those feelings that they share with us on this planet. This koala bear is particularly remarkable because the koala bear's eyes are among the best in the whole album. It's looking deeply, deeply into the thin air. It's not looking at anything. It's thinking of something very important. And we see it and we realize it. What we have in common with this koala bear. And because Lü Uanming has such command of the naturalistic representation of these animals, he sometimes likes to create a pattern. So in the case of the toad has various bumps on its back, and he renders these very beautifully as a kind of a dippled pattern. Another thing he does, I mentioned before, is he sometimes flattens the part of the image. This is something Li Gonglin does also, and Zhao Mengfu did it also. And Lü Uanming does this beautifully with these two pigs. Lü Uanming has acquired a sensibility very similar to that of fellow intellectuals, poets, and artists who lived in China about 1,000 years ago. As I said, Lü Uanming observes animals and plants very carefully, but his aim isn't to create an accurate picture. This naturalism is just one creative method among others. He he doesn't build up a naturalistic image using strokes the way it's done in the West. What he does is, as I said before, is he fuses the stroke with the object so that they're one thing, which is extremely difficult to do. And of course, he also, creates patterns, as I said before, not just in the toad, but in the animals. He creates abstract patterns. So there's a kind of abstraction within the work, which again is rooted in the Chinese tradition, and yet there are no artists in Song times or any other time who do it this way. So it's satisfying both from a modernist perspective and just from the point of looking at the objects. There's a great deal of subtlety in this, and again, an art historian will notice not only his ability to play with and to recreate features from the Chinese tradition, but also from the European realist and naturalist tradition. What's happened here is Lü Uanming is totally in command of both traditions, and again he fuses them. So in general you won't notice it unless you're actually a historian or an art historian. Then you notice he uses highlights. And the accuracy, the anatomical accuracy of some of the animals again draws on a European tradition, but he does it effortlessly with the brush using the same technique, and so the two traditions finally really come together, as the word 中西融合 was meant to imply. This painting of a pumpkin, and I think perhaps a rabbit, is an excellent example of how Lü Uanming juxtaposes abstract patterns with highly naturalistic work. The dried, broken stem that comes up, this is painted entirely in a Chinese manner with very fine brush strokes, and it looks almost photographic. The pumpkin itself is rather abstract, and the rabbits, the patterns on the rabbit's fur again appear almost geometric. So he's juxtaposing 3 or 4 different types of sensibility and 3 or 4 different types of aesthetic and artistic concern, all in the same image. He often shows the interaction between animals and their environment. What we're looking at here is a confluence of sensibility. You can think of these paintings not just as descriptions of animals or as analyses into their inner state, but as a means of doing research on the animals. He shows us how they they take pleasure in their powers. And this is one of those things that these paintings convey, which you won't find in hardly any other artist's work. And speaking of thought, the next painting seems to be commentary on Rodin's The Thinker. Okay, obviously this animal is thinking. It's very human. And here again you can see that his naturalism is informed by European understanding of the anatomy of the camel. You can feel the bones underneath. You know how the neck is set. The animal holds together in an anatomically convincing way, all in the end to convey to us a certain inner state of mind. The album ends with still life, a pumpkin or a lettuce-type vegetable. There's a jar in the back which is clearly abstracted and flattened. Lettuce is rendered very naturalistically. It's stunning. He's rendered the roots, say, of the lettuce just with single strokes. So that's a very good example of what I mentioned earlier, the complete fusing of the stroke and the object. It's not that the stroke describes the object, it is the object, and that's part of what makes it poetic. He also uses highlighting here, a European technique, but he uses it in a way that I don't know of any European painter who does it like that. It's a very sensitive brush, held or controlled by a very sensitive mind, which it seems to me is empathetic toward just about every living thing in the universe. It's another set of radishes which convey even more explicitly the points I just made. But the two radishes in front are especially interesting because the first one is fully rendered with shading, even though using Chinese ink technique. It's not using European techniques here. So as I say, it fuses East and West. It totally fuses the techniques coming from Europe and from China. The radish in the very front, or that might be garlic, is somewhat abstracted, and for the first time it comes apart as individual strokes, and the strokes begin to disengage in that case from the object. That makes us that much more aware of the intense naturalism of the other object. There's a wonderful sensitivity and sensibility in every single stroke. That particular stroke, there's thought all through it. There's no moment where he stops thinking and feeling about what it is that he is painting, whether it's a root or an eye or fur or whatever. They're all very gently and tenderly and lovingly touched by the brush. So this is a very empathetic individual, it seems to me, and these paintings allow you to participate in that sensitivity and empathy toward the world. So I hope you enjoy viewing these exceptional paintings.